Good evening, and welcome to the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It's Monday, October 14th. Can I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Ashour.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here.
Alderman Bevere.
Here.
Alderman Davalos.
Here.
Alderman Goodman.
Here.
Alderman Krischel.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
And Alderman Widener is absent.
Is absent. Okay, if you would all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have several people who have signed up for citizens' comments. When we do the committee of the whole meeting, you can either make your comment now, or you can make your comment when we present the item on the agenda. So it's up to you if you would like to, how would you like to do this? You want to wait till we get to the agenda item? Okay, very good. Patrick, would you like to make your announcement now? Okay.
I'm Pat. My last name is O'Connor. I'm at 3S570 Warren Avenue. I'm a people reason. Last week meeting, we talked about the no-name gas station thing. I was sitting there, I was thinking, why does the city want to buy it? I understand, I totally understand the people have a right to park there. Okay, it's a family property, I understand that. But my thing is, how does the city think have the people park there all night long and all day for the neighbor on the one side? My question is if the city bought that property, I think you need to tell the people who own that place to get the car out of there, and that means the city can work on it. But that's my question about that. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how you people think about that. But my thing is if the people have a right to park all the car there all night long, all day, and the city want to come in to take everything down, you can't have the people park there all the time. That's what my question is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Okay, now on to official and staff comments. Mayor?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Alderman? Alderman Goodman?
I have a couple of announcements from the Fermilab Community Advisory Board. Fermilab has had some exciting news lately. First of all, they set a world record for the field strength for an accelerator magnet. So this is a new world record, the strongest magnet field strength ever on planet Earth, which is pretty fantastic here at Fermilab. And secondly, they've just announced the winners for the 2020 Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics. Most people are familiar with the Nobel Prize. This is a somewhat different prize that's not as well known, but actually pays a significant amount more money, which is kind of nice for them. But 2 Fermilab scientists shared in that award this year for the image of a black hole that many of you may have seen in the news a few months ago. They were on that project, a worldwide project at 8 different facilities to take this image over many years, and the names of the 2 scientists were Bradford Benson and Alexandra Rollin. So congratulations to them.
Good. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. City Administrator?
I don't have anything to add tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Staff? Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kugler.
I just want to take this opportunity to welcome Kristen Youngmeyer. She's our new management analyst, replaces Justin Miller, who left in mid-August. I introduced her, I think, to all of you individually last week, but I want to make an announcement publicly for her. She comes to us from Cincinnati. She had worked with a consulting firm that had proposed on a project that we gave to a different consultant earlier this year, but she was a management analyst with them. She's got experience with the city of Hamilton in her time there, and she's already starting to make good impact on us in the last couple of weeks she's been here. So welcome, Kristen.
Great. Welcome to Warrenville, Kristen. I know you'll love it. Okay, that's it. So now on to the business of the meeting. Consideration of a stop sign modification at Patterman Road and Prairie Avenue. This would be Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kugler.
Thank you. Earlier this year, a Patterman resident requested that staff review the stop sign configuration at the intersection of Patterman Road and Prairie Avenue, Candlewood Lane. He was requesting a four-way stop due to some near-miss accidents he'd had traveling on Patterman through that intersection. As you can see on the map, that's the intersection we're talking about. It's generally east of Route 59 and north of Butterfield Road. You can flip to the next one. It's hard to make out on here. If maybe Christine can zoom in on a little bit. The red dots at the northeast corners and southeast corner of the road intersection are stop signs. Currently, there are stop signs that exist on Candlewood and on Prairie, and no stop sign control on Patterman. So it's just a two-way stop, east and west. As a result of this, and what we typically do is we have the police department do traffic counts, which they did in this case earlier this year. Staff reviews the traffic counts with the police departments. And typically in these situations, we probably, in my 10 years here, we seem to get about one or two of these a year, requests of just for stop signs somewhere or some change. And this is the first one that I've come across where I haven't just said that the status quo there's no warrant to change the existing stop signs in most cases. In this case, the results of the study warranted at least talking to our consulting traffic engineer. And after talking with him about the warrants that are in the manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is what we rely on as a standard for deciding where stop signs should be placed and where they shouldn't be placed, the conclusion was that there are stop signs warranted on Patterman, but not on the Prairie and Candlewood legs of the intersection. So it would be to reverse the configuration that's there now. And the reason behind that is there's probably about 4 times as much traffic that travels east and west versus north and south in that through that intersection. So typically you want to stop the traffic from the lower volume streets and allow the higher volume street to go unrestricted. And what I would speculate is that as the resident was traveling through the intersection, people, and I've heard this from not just him, but I think a couple of the people who called and spoke with me last Friday or Thursday, Friday, that people frequently either roll through or blow through stop signs that are there right now, which is that's an enforcement thing. But part of the reason they do that is because the stop signs shouldn't be there. They are warranted. My guess is they stop there. There's never anybody that's traveling north and south, so they just get in that habit of not seeing anybody and just roll through or eventually blow through those stop signs. We did notify the residents on like 1 block west on Prairie, 1 block north on Patterman, and 1 block south on Patterman by handing out door-to-door notices. And then we also sent a email copy of the notice to the HOA for the homeowners association for Edgebrook subdivision, so they could distribute it among the residents there to make sure that people knew about what staff's recommendation was and that we'd be discussing it tonight. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, the Alderman have any questions? Alderman Davalos?
What's the foot traffic? I don't know if there's sidewalks there. I don't know if kids are walking, or what's the other traffic that would be by foot going on there?
And within the Edgebrook subdivision, they've got sidewalks on both sides of the street, right along the bed. It's directly behind the curb, so right next to the street. If you go west on Prairie, I think just the first 3 houses on each side, if you can see on there, there's sidewalk on both sides, and there's a bit of a parkway. On Patterman, as far as I know, there's no sidewalk. So, and people on Patterman have to walk on the street or potentially ride their bikes on the street too.
What's your gut feeling about traffic going really quickly down there? Is there any objection to when they don't see a stop sign? I mean, obviously you're saying a lot of people don't obey the stop sign, so I'm sure the traffic is quick, but it'll be quicker now. Is that
I don't
is that
know-
relevant?
I don't know that it'll be quicker. My gut reaction is that people that are speeding will drive as fast as when they're speeding, as fast as they feel comfortable driving for whatever that reason is. So if they're driving at a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit and they're driving 30 or 35 miles an hour, I don't think taking out the stop sign is going to make them accelerate to 40 or 45 miles an hour. I think they'll just continue on at the speed they're going. Now, they shouldn't be speeding. If there's people driving 35 miles an hour down there, the police should be out there and enforce that. And that's something we can talk with the police department about. But I don't believe that people just continue to press the accelerator down without a stop sign there. As we talked about with Warrenville Road, stop signs are not traffic calming devices. And they're
Okay. And this is also agreed upon, I think by the police department is agreeing with the change?
Yes, I spoke with Chief Toronto, and he concurs with the recommendation.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Goodman?
So the initial thought was to have a four-way stop, and why isn't that the recommendation?
Because the four-way stop is not warranted. That was one of the things I talked about with the traffic engineer, and I asked specifically because that was what the request was. And I also figured that would probably be the least controversial for everybody involved in the neighborhood. But a four-way stop isn't warranted because there's 4 times as much traffic on the east-west direction as there is in the north-south direction.
But would putting in 2 additional stop signs in the other direction help with any of the enforcement problems of the existing stop signs if you left the 2 that were there? I mean, I understand what you're saying about warrants and how that you need to meet certain warrants in order to install a stop sign, but I'm not sure that the same standard applies in terms of taking stop signs out.
I think you're still going to have the same issues with people rolling through or blowing through stop signs east and west as there are. And I don't think that'll change because they're still not stopping for anybody. There's nobody. Most of the time, the cars that drive through there aren't encountering anybody on the cross street. What it would stop is the gentleman on Patterman who has had the near misses. Traffic would have to stop at that stop sign in Patterman and look before they went, assuming they obey the stop signs too. But so it would potentially solve his issue. Although if you stopped on Patterman at stop sign and saw cars approaching, assuming they're going to stop at the cross street, and you go through, there's still the potential that they don't obey that stop sign and they hit you, which again they'd be in the wrong for going through a stop sign. But I think part of the reason they get in the habit of no cross traffic there and just go through those stop signs. I don't know how frequent it is. I've heard anecdotally that people roll through or blow through those stop signs frequently, but I don't have any data to tell me how often that happens.
Okay.
Alderman Verveer?
Yeah, I've got a lot of calls from the residents, emails, everything. And what's happening there is everybody used to come off Meadow, take Home Avenue to get to Butterfield. Now you got to go down the frontage road to get down to Patterman to get on to Butterfield, and it's such a bad turn there. Everybody's going Prairie to Patterman. So if we remove that stop sign, they're just going to be flying through there and then turning that corner without stopping. And the more I looked at it, I believe, after listening to the residents, and I think the stop signs are good the way they are right now. The road's really skinny on Patterman, and when you come up, you just almost kind of stop and look, but there's no stop sign there. And then the next stop sign in Thornwild, Edgebrook, is until Twin Pines. So there's a lot of kids in there, and there's a lot of cars that are parked along the street they could duck out. And I believe the stop sign is good the way it is. And I think it slows down people not coming to the subdivision as fast. So I would be in favor of leaving it as it is. And I know we got a lot of residents here that'll probably be speaking about it tonight. Thank you.
Alderman Ashour?
Appreciate all the effort that went into this, considering there was a complaint by one individual, or at least a comment. I didn't realize we went to this depth when only one person had an issue. I don't agree with taking the stop sign out. I go that way sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I don't see people rolling through the stop sign. I think it's a way that causes people to be at a dead stop before they get onto Candlewood. With the amount of kids that are in that subdivision, I think it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, the people that live close by there want the cars to stop there, and there's a reason the stop sign was put in. I don't know, it didn't put itself in. When I was a young person, there was no stop sign there. There was no subdivision. But the stop sign went in for a reason, and I think it's for, to stop that from being a higher speed throughfare. I think that the township looked at it as a solution to put a four-way sign in by Home Avenue. There's only sidewalks for part of that. The kids that walk that way walk right on the street. I look at it as something that causes the drivers to be more aware of their surroundings. They come from a dead stop coming into a very busy subdivision. I think it's a safety issue. I don't have any problem adding stop signs on Patterman if that's the suggestion. But I don't see some of the things that are suggested in the backup. I don't see people rolling through, and I think it's whether everybody says it is or not, I believe it's a traffic calming measure and supports the level of speed and traffic that people in the subdivision want.
Thank you. Now, when I read your name, if you'd please come up to the podium for the citizens' comments. These are the people that I have, if you'd come up in that order. John Schroeder, Daniel Elvira, Jerry Hessam, Sarah Dillon, and Paul Slezak.
First of all, thank you to the mayor and city council for the ability to.
First of all, make sure that you give us your name and address.
I will.
Very good.
But thank you for letting me address this issue. My name is John Schroeder. I've lived on the corner of Prairie and Patterman for 25 years. And just to give you a little historical perspective, when we moved in, we were told initially that going east off Prairie into Thornwhite was going to be a fire entrance only. And that westbound traffic coming out onto Prairie would be prohibited. So much for that idea. As to who stops at that stop sign, there are three categories. There are people who do stop religiously every day. There's people who roll through and make sure that there's not a police monitoring the intersection. And then there's people that fly through at all kinds of speeds. In my opinion, if you take down the stop signs, you're going to turn Prairie into a racetrack. Another historical perspective over the years, that corner in that street has been an elementary bus stop for kids. It's been a middle school bus stop for kids, and it's been a high school bus stop for kids. And again, I think if you eliminate those stop signs, it's going to be a tragedy waiting to happen. And so, you know, despite what the traffic study says, I think there's a traffic study in what's right and wrong. And taking out those stop signs would just be wrong. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. And next, Daniel.
My name is Daniel Elvira, and I live on Patterman Road, 3 South 124 Patterman Road. I have lived there for 20 years. And so I think the results of the study are correct. And I see every day that people roll this stop, you know, almost systematically. And every couple of months, I have a serious near miss, an accident that I have narrowly avoided. In a couple of cases, I had it with trucks that almost, you know, hit me in the middle of the car. So what I suggested to the city is to actually have a four-stop intersection, right? I didn't suggest to remove the stop sign. I understand the concerns of my neighbors. Now, the study suggested that since there was more traffic in one direction than the other 4 times, then they would like to swap the stop signs. I don't know, I'm not an expert. Again, what I suggested was to add stop sign on Patterson Road, I prefer to stop myself. I don't want to run through Patterson Road to get really fast to work or elsewhere. I want to be prudent. I would like to stop myself, but make sure that the other person is going to be stopped. And I prefer to have control myself. So I stop and see what's going on. And then if they roll the stop, then they roll the stop. But in 20 years, I've had many near misses. And I was very worried when my kids were living at home that they would drive and they were not so experienced driving that one of these days they would be hit. It's true that there are not many neighbors living on Patterson Road, but that doesn't make my life easier, right? After 20 years, I'm a little bit tired of the situation. And once, my wife came home and said, look, we have to do something about it because, each time that we arrive to the intersection, we have to be praying that, this truck is going to stop. And so I just want to support some action in here. After hearing my neighbors, I guess that the most reasonable solution would be to make it a 4-stop intersection. To me, the next best solution was to swap the stop signs, but I'm not sure anymore about this, right? I know that there is a bus stop in there, right? A school bus stop. That's where my kids actually would take the bus to go to school every day. So, I'm sensitive to my neighbors' concerns, but I would also request if you could be sensitive to mine, because it's something that haunts me every day. Each time I drive, I have almost post-traumatic stress disorder with that intersection. Since I live there, then I go through there, every day, several times a day. So thank you very much for listening to my request, and I thank you very much for actually being sensitive to my email request and actually doing something about it and commissioning this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Jerry?
Hello, my name is Jerry Heisem, and excuse me, I'm going to have to look at my notes because I wrote a whole bunch and some of the issues have been addressed already. I'd like to thank the two aldermen who have spoken how they feel about that intersection, because I do feel it's a very dangerous intersection, contrary to its appearance. It appears to be a quiet little place, outside of town and a little safety zone, but it's not. To begin things with, I'd like to talk about this letter that was given to the residents and the fact that we were told it was due to a request of one individual. Now, I don't know where most people were raised or grown up, but in many of the city councils that I have sat in, different types of meetings along the way, if somebody has an opposition, I did not know that the city government jumps right in, and because of one person, money is taken away from this city because one person has a problem with it. And my knowledge, unless I'm wrong, is the fact that this resident made no effort to contact the people who are living right there. They made no effort at all. I don't believe they drew up any type of petition asking anybody how they felt, whether they were pro or con. So my first question, I guess, would be, how does something like that happen in a town like this? How can one person, well, I don't really know how much a traffic engineer, but something tells me it's not cheap. So you're inviting more people into this and giving the city more bills to pay. That was totally unnecessary. I can see if, in fact, that you had a petition and it was lined up saying, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I cannot accept a city just saying, okay, it's just on one person. To me, it's just not, doesn't make any sense financially or otherwise. With the, okay, I mentioned that, but the cost. Is the traffic engineer's report available to people of those residents? Like, this letter was just given to us 4 days ago. And first of all, I think that's inappropriate. I think there's a little bit more notice, and I think we could have had even a bigger show. 4 days to get this letter because it's sitting in your door does not make proper introduction to what we need to do. Okay, in the letter also, I don't know if you guys have a copy of the letter that was sent or given to us, but they talk about the staff recommendations and removing those signs and putting in 2 others. And right under that, there's this question, why, written in there. And basically, their answer is because there's too much traffic on Prairie. I consider myself a very logical person. If there's too much traffic already and you're going into a subdivision full of children, full of bus stops, cars lined up on both sides of the road, common sense would please keep that stop sign there so those people that are going through there that I guarantee are speeding, that they know they have to stop. And if so need be, put another one on Patterman, but that one right there is so critical because why the police are never there is beyond me. My brother lives right on that corner. And let me tell you, the traffic there, it gets a little crowded, but when those people are going down Prairie, they are going down Prairie. And if they didn't have to stop, they wouldn't stop. They need to stop. That subdivision is, I mean, especially when the weather's warm and those kids, they're out there. They're on their bikes just riding through the streets. And you take that away, like the other gentleman said, you take that away and you're going to get total havoc, and it's only a matter of time because one of those kids end up in the hospital or dead. I mean, I would ask every single one of you to sit in my brother's living room 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and just watch that traffic to see what we're talking about. And when they have here, just because there's more traffic, I don't see how that is a response to why you need another one, just because there's more traffic there. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. If I'm going to ask you a question why, you want something logical in response, not just because there's more traffic. No, why? There's more than that. And then why was one resident allowed to start all this? It's a hot mess, really, it is, and that stop sign needs to stay. I mean, another concern in this letter, in my opinion, this is all just my opinion, please bear with me, but it seems like the city has already drawn a conclusion because of their own words here. They've made a conclusion here. It says that right there in the 4th paragraph, that that's what they want. And I think before they should have commented on anything like that, they should have been here listening to what these people have to say before they've even done that. I just think that's inappropriate also. But like I said, I don't know if we can have answers to the questions of how one person can start this. Because if that's the case, and you say, yes, I can guarantee you, people will be bombarding this city with all kinds of stuff. Real simple. I never heard of anything like that happening before, so I would like the answer to that question. I certainly would like the city to publish that letter from the traffic engineer to see exactly what was written in that report, other than the fact that, yes, there's a lot of traffic. There's got to be more to that if he's making a recommendation and you're paying for it. So I'm not going to ask you how much the whole thing has cost everybody, but I think it's every single one of those pennies is misplaced and should have been spent elsewhere. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, Sarah?
Hello, my name is Sarah Dillon. I live at 29W551 Prairie, and I am here to object to removing the stop signs on our road. I don't object to adding one. I think it's a good idea. I think it should be made a four-way stop. I do have small children that like to play out front, and people do already fly down the street, so that's a concern. I went around and spoke to 25 of the neighbors, and they agreed with me. And you guys are welcome to see that if you'd like. They all agreed that we think it should be a four-way stop instead of removing one. And I did speak with people on Candlewood, Prairie, Patterman, and Birchwood. So all four ends. But I think that's about all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Paul, you have a letter you would like to read? Is that it?
I gave you the letter to read. I'll just touch on the point, please.
Okay.
My name is Paul Slezak. I live at 29W541 Prairie Avenue, and I'm opposed to the stop sign removal. I did write a letter, and I provided you with one copy. I'm sorry. I meant to mail it, but I just didn't have enough time between receiving and the meeting. And I did sign that one, by the way. So the one I have, I'll just read you the points that I think make this a bad idea. Now, I agree with making it a four-way stop, and the reason I do is because since I've lived there, they've added this four-way stop at home in Prairie, and that seems to have improved that particular intersection. So I could see where that would improve the Patterman, Prairie, Candlewood intersection as well. They also have since the bus stops for the children. I don't have any children of school age, but I can see where that would improve the safety issue for them to cross the street, and they have since added a bus stop at the home avenue, which they didn't have all the time. It's not always the same. So they redesigned those bus stops based on the children that are going to the schools. And so I think the four-way stop makes sense to me for a safety issue for the children. And then also, cars do travel rather quickly, but there's not a heck of a lot of them. So while you say it's 4 times more, and it might be, but 4 to 1 doesn't make a whole lot of cars. So it's really not a traffic, I don't believe it's a congestion issue. We're not talking about 59 and 50 and Butterfield. We're not talking about Batavia and 59. There's not a heck of a lot of cars at one time. But the ones that do come there can travel pretty quickly. And opening up a street where there's no way to stop, or whether you obey the rule or not, at least you have to think about it. And if there is a police officer there, then when they don't stop, they'll be in trouble. But if the stop sign's not there, there's nothing legally you can do to them to make them slow down. So I would like to see that stop sign say, and really the four-way stop makes the most sense. That's based on, and then people that walk, well, we have a sidewalk on part of that Prairie Avenue. It's not all the way. So more people walk with their dogs, walk with their kids, ride bicycles on the street. The street is narrow, as was mentioned, so therefore the traffic, as it is now, 2 cars passing by is good. But if it's a truck in a car, or a school bus in a car, not so good. And because on the Candlewood side, they're allowed to park on the south side of the street, a school bus coming through will not allow 2 cars and the school bus. So you have to wait anyway. So removing the stop sign is just not a good idea. On the Prairie Candlewood side, but adding one to the Patterman side would probably make sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Okay, just make sure that you give us your name and address.
My name's Amy Murphy, and we live at 29 West 530 Prairie. Previously, we lived on Big Woods, which is the next subdivision, if you will, closer to Butterfield. So I was very familiar with driving down Patterman to home to cut through to get to, that stoplight by Dairy Queen. And I will definitely agree that it is a very narrow road, and if anyone is walking or riding a bike, it's scary. And it's scary when you see another car, coming right through that stop sign at Prairie and Candlewood. And it happens all the time. And again, made a very good point that it's not like there's 1,000 cars. But I've been almost hit twice, and it's just, to me, not necessary to remove that stop sign. If anything, it would be very detrimental to do so. I do understand the philosophy that you've got a steady stream of people going down that street, and that makes sense, but not for that kind of neighborhood, because there's not a steady stream of cars. So I am very much opposed to removing those stop signs, but I would like to see a four-way. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other questions or comments by the alderman? Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for staff. Is there a stop sign, let me get this straight, on Birchwood and Prairie or Candlewood? Is there a stop sign there? It's just at Prairie and Patterman.
Yeah, you're right. There's the stop signs that are at Birchwood are on Birchwood, not on Candlewood.
Okay. And what was the comment about a four-way? What was the feedback from the engineer and your thoughts on if they did have a four-way there, or we did do that?
A four-way is not warranted based on the traffic volumes, is what his response is. Again, 4 times as much traffic. It's something like 600 and some cars going north and south through the intersection versus like 2,500 cars going east and west, based on the police department's traffic counts. But again, stopping the vehicles that are very often no vehicles waiting to go. So if you had a four-way stop, you still wouldn't have very many people at all on Patterman waiting to go while the east-west traffic is going. So if I pull up on Prairie, I stop, I look north and south, there's nobody there, and the majority of the time, I believe that's probably the case. So the traffic engineer he actually said that the stop signs should be removed from Prairie and they should be put on Patterman. He actually entertained in his stuff, which I didn't include, maybe you should remove stop signs entirely, which I think is foolish. But the warrants in the MUTCD are clear that that this doesn't warrant a four-way stop.
Okay, so probably a four-way stop wouldn't be approved by the people we would.
Well, ultimately it's city council's decision. So if council wants a four-way stop, you can vote to have a four-way stop there. You could vote to leave it the same way it is now. You could vote to go with what I'm recommending here, but it's entirely your decision. It's not my decision to make, but my recommendation based on the standards is to remove the stop signs from the east-west and put them on the north-south.
Yeah, listening to the public, my thought that goes through my head is this may not be a typical standard situation, only because of these narrow streets, and I've driven through the subdivision, and you have to be careful that, everybody knows it's not wide streets and kids are there, and it may not be just a typical intersection that you might find with a different set of streets that were wider and more sidewalk and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking maybe this isn't your typical, maybe this is a different kind of situation. So that's what I'm mulling around, and I just wanted to see what objections would be to a four-way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
City Administrator Coakley?
Thank you. Is that working? Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. We have a lot of people here, our residents, that there's no reason they should understand the comments about a traffic engineer. And when we've worked in this field for a lot of years, we just use some shortcuts. So if you give me just a moment, I'll try to clarify some of that, and then we can get back to the discussion. We have the traffic engineer do a study because they're an expert in I'm going to use layman's terms because I'm not an engineer, standards that come from a municipal traffic, I never get that right, uniform devices book that has years and decades of study and science behind it. The standards, or what we call warrants, is the term that traffic engineers use. It's not a term used for anything else except some legal things. That says why you'd put a stop sign in at a certain place. It has to be certain things about visibility or type of traffic or rights of way or through fares. I'm, again, doing a layman's job on this because that's what I am. So that's the lens that we're looking at this intersection is, if we were starting it over today, would you have the stop sign on Prairie? The engineer's saying, no, it doesn't meet those warrants or those standards, so you wouldn't put it in there. You would put it in on Patterman because that's the less traveled street, and we want to make sure that people stop if they're on Patterman so that they don't get hit by somebody on Prairie that'll be going through, or, which I have observed on the rare occasions. My kids used to have some friends out there when they were young. People do kind of roll through the stop signs on Prairie because it's human nature, because when you don't see someone after 100 and some times you've gone through there, you just kind of touch the brakes and go through. I've done it, we all have, but we're not on trial here. But that's what they're talking about to reduce, for increased safety and to reduce liability. You look at those standards and try to follow them as closely as you can, so we don't just put up stop signs all over the place. If you drive through communities where there's just stop signs every block for no apparent reason, drivers get frustrated and they do a quick stop like I was just referring to, and they don't stop for them. And pedestrians or kids can have a false impression that someone's going to stop. It can create a different type of safety hazard. That's the science and information behind what we're talking about, not why we make the decision, but what they're using, what Phil is using, our engineer, Public Works staff is using from the traffic engineer to try to assess that situation. I just wanted to address the other question that came up. Why do we react to one resident bringing an issue up? We don't always. We get issues, complaints all the time. Sometimes we just tell them, I'm sorry, this is the day we do that pickup, it's something that we do, whatever it is. We can't possibly, you're absolutely correct. We couldn't just knee-jerk and we'd be twisting every direction if 13,000 people contact us every day about some different thing that they just wanted. However, if someone brings up something that our staff, in this case, rightly so, identifies as a potential safety hazard, they do at least look into it and consider what might be there. In this case, to take it a step further, see something that is warranted, or there's that word again, that may be flagged because there's something that doesn't meet the traffic safety standards that we use and have used for a long time. So that's why we're looking at something from our own resident. It could be 100 residents, could be one resident. If they tell us there's something that could be a safety issue, we're going to take it seriously and look at it. If somebody says, you know, my preference is for this thing or that thing, or wider or narrower, or I don't like the street light, we listen to everybody, but we can't always just change things just because of one resident. So you're absolutely right on that. I hope that helps provide some context for the discussion. I'll let everybody get back to deliberating what you want to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Goodman?
My understanding of the way that we've used traffic warrants in the past is we've asked the question, when we're thinking about making a change, we go out and we see what the traffic counts are, and if the change is warranted, if it meets the warrants, if there's enough traffic for a particular stop sign to be turned into a stop light, that's one of the most common requests that we get. People say, I'd love to have a stop light at Maple Hill. I get this on my neighborhood all the time. They'd love to have a stop light on 59. So, number one, we don't control the traffic control device at 59 because it's a state highway. But number two, we don't meet the warrants. And what does that mean when I have to explain this to my neighbors in Maple Hill over and over again? It means that there's not enough traffic count through there to change our stop sign into a stop light. This is a very different situation. When we say that the current stop sign that we already have may not meet the warrants, I mean, first of all, this is within our control. And secondly, nobody asked us to take that stop sign out. So when we're asked the question, should we put stop signs in the other direction, and we've looked at it, seems to me, yes, it meets the warrants. So given that, I think the best result here is a four-way stop. That's my conclusion after the information I've been given by staff and the feedback from residents and our understanding of that intersection. So that's what I would be in favor of, and I would like to make a motion.
We have more questions.
Okay, I will make a motion later.
Okay. Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. I'm keying off the city administrator's word of standards. I totally understand that, and if we can't follow standard data sometimes, it gets chaotic. But I think I've heard many times in the that a development like Thornwild and Edgebrook would not be, we could not build that again. It wouldn't fit the zoning and the ordinances that we have now, for various reasons. The parking, the size of the streets, the whole deal. It was built before we had all this, all the municipal codes and all the kinds of things that we have now that make a real difference in the developments that we do. So I don't think we have a standard situation here. The other thing is we have a ton of kids in there, and that's what keeps running through my mind is, I'm concerned about that. So I guess I feel like Alderman Goodman in a way. This just isn't, I respect the standards, and I think normally they work. I just think this is not a standard. This development wasn't built to our current standards, and I think there's some real challenges in there. We've heard from a lot of parents out there, and I think, yeah, if anything, I wouldn't take them out. I wouldn't make it a 4, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. I have friends that live on Home Avenue, and I have friends that live in Edgebrook, Thornwild. And I come from the north, so I come down Home Avenue, and one day there was a 4-way stop sign there. And, but the 4-way stop sign there is great because the people on Prairie coming off of 59 just, whew, right through. And they continue to drive quickly. I know that because I drive down that street and go in that back way to Edgebrook, Thornwild. I'm afraid that if we take the stop signs down, that the traffic will just, from Home Avenue, will just speed right into Edgebrook, Thornwild. And I know it's not warranted to have stop signs on Patterman, but at this point, in order to protect the people who live on Patterman and to protect those people who live on Prairie, that we do put in 4-way stops. Okay, Alderman Ashour?
The reference to creating an ordinance to change the intersection, remove the stop sign, and add the stop signs, do we need to create an ordinance to add stop signs on Prairie since they clearly are allowed? If we just leave out the part about taking them off of Prairie and add them on Patterman, do we even have to create an ordinance? Can we do it on a recommendation of the council?
I think an ordinance is necessary to be able to make the change to the city codes. They're documented in the city code properly, so they can be enforced by the police department.
So if we took the ordinance or the committee action request that you have suggested and just put to create a 4-way stop sign or 4-way stop at the end of that paragraph, would that satisfy that need?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Alderman Kreschel?
Thanks. So I just wanted to say something before we amend this motion, which I think is going to happen. I understand standards, and if we don't use standards, I'm for leaving the stop signs how they are, first of all, I'll say that. We go and start adding stop signs where they may not be warranted and deciding we're going to base decisions on emotions rather than standards. I'm not sure what kind of future, we're going to set a precedent that way. So I'm for leaving them. I would maybe caution amending the motion to make a 4-way.
Alderman Bevere, did you have your hand? Okay, Alderman Goodman.
My understanding is that every stop sign in the city is listed in our zoning ordinance. So yes, to make this change to a 4-way stop, we do need to modify the ordinance. I believe that's how it works. So I'm going to make a motion as follows. I move to direct staff to work with the city attorney to create an ordinance to make the appropriate changes to the city code and recommend the city council approve an ordinance modifying the stop sign configuration at the intersection of Patterman Road and Prairie Avenue, Candlewood Lane to a 4-way stop.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Ashour. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you all for coming this evening. It was great that you came to give us your input. It's very much appreciated. Mhm. Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of a job safety analysis and motor vehicle safety policy update. And that would be Assistant City Administrator Christina White.
Thank you. We continue our trend of reviewing safety policies. Tonight in your in your committee packet is the job safety analysis policy, which provides guidance on completing the job safety analysis, especially for those job tasks that have a higher probability of causing injury, as well as creating job procedures to ensure safe work practices. The second policy in your packet is the motor vehicle safety policy, which establishes the qualifications and expectations for employees who drive city vehicles. These are the next in a series of policies that the committee has already reviewed and council approved, as well as other policies that will be coming forward in the upcoming meetings. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Any questions? I am glad that the city's finally doing this. It's, I come from a company, work for a company that takes safety very, very seriously. And we constantly have, go through safety meetings every single month on different topics. And this is great. I appreciate it. Okay, Alderman Wilson?
I would like to make a recommendation to City Council adopt a job safety analysis and motor vehicle safety policies effective immediately.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Alderman Goodman, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I just had one question about the motor vehicle safety section of this policy. It doesn't seem to contemplate, police officers who are using very complicated equipment while they're driving. Maybe we should add a reference to that in addition to talking about some of the other distractions about cell phones. They're using a whole computer. It's not really just a handheld device. So some of the language here is maybe a little too specific, and we could broaden that perhaps.
Christina White?
Thank you. We have policies and procedures specific to the police department within the police department. So they have their own set of standard operating procedures for how they handle their vehicles, their safety inspections for their vehicles. So we wanted to keep the citywide one somewhat broad in terms of the distracted driving, because those are specific, the examples you just proposed are specific to the police department and is addressed within the police department policies.
Right, but I think the language here is too specific and should be made just a little bit broader.
Okay. We'll review it before
Thank
the
you.
next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 3, consideration of Omnia Partners Agreement with Train for Police Department HVAC project. That would be Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kukler.
Thank you. $400,000 was included in this year's budget to replace the large HVAC units that are on the rooftop of the police department. We're proposing to use the purchasing cooperative Omnia Partners, who has a low bid contract with Train for HVAC replacement projects for this project. Train will perform, the first step would be to perform an engineering design of the system, because every system is a little bit different, in order to help inform their proposal so they can give the city actually a formal proposal, detailed proposal on the project, and staff would bring that proposal to a future council meeting for consideration. But I want to make sure that the council is on board with this process, because this is different than our normal bidding process. A lot of times for our road program, we'll have an engineer come on board, they'll develop plans, we'll go out to bid and take the lowest responsible bidder. In this case, this is kind of a non-standard project. We don't have a standard engineer that we go to help us design these projects. Staff doesn't have the expertise to spec this stuff out and create bid documents for it. So with this purchasing cooperative, we've got a situation where they've got a low bid price. They went out to bid and Train was the low bidder. And to have set pricing where then we can go work with Train directly and bring back a contract to city council for approval at a later time. So I just want to make sure the council, the purpose of this is to make sure the council's on board with this, and we'll just proceed with Train then, if council is, and authorize a contract to pay them $7,300 to develop an engineering plan for the project and give us a proposal. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Alderman Goodman.
My one question has to do with how this cooperative bidding arrangement works across state lines. It says here that they were the lowest bid for a contract at a schools district in Maryland.
Yes.
So I just sort of wonder, is the price the same in Maryland as in Illinois for these sorts of services? Or are there some sort of adjustments that they make in the cooperative for state-by-state modifications?
Yeah, that's a good question. They do, so the price for their products are the same, but for the installation where they're hiring, they do hire subcontractors to help them out with the installation, and those contractors are set by region. So Chicago area is going to be more expensive than some rural area in Virginia or something. So there are, within their contract, there are set rates or multipliers or allowances for kind of region by region, because certain areas, New York would be more expensive area, California would be more expensive than some areas out in the middle of nowhere for labor and that kind of stuff. So Train will follow that, and that's something we'll have to review that when they give us their proposal to make sure they are following the contract that they have with Omnia Partners for this.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like this cooperative is a good resource if it has sort of obscure types of work that we don't do very often ourselves or necessarily have our neighboring communities do often enough to give us recent data about the prices and what these things should be. So having a nationwide pool of information is a tremendously useful resource. But yeah, I'm not sure how the pricing would translate. And if they have local people that work for them, then they may not be the same people that did good work. But if you have local, it sounds like they've done it in Kendall County and Roselle, then maybe those are the same local people that we're going to have as the subcontractors?
I would think so. I don't know that for sure, but I would think so. And Roselle's going through this right now. It's a very similar project. Kendall County's is a couple years ago, I think, and they have also done some smaller projects with DuPage County as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We just used, we just replaced at work 2 Train HVAC systems on the roof of the building, and you have to get this huge crane, and it has to take off the old one, it's put on, and we had to actually shut down that side of the building, so there were no employees in there. So these people actually know what they're doing, and they get the correct type of people to do this. So, and we're very specific at work as to pricing. So I know that the pricing was very good. So, anybody have a motion? Alderman Goodman?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council authorize staff to work with Train to develop preliminary engineering and a final proposal for City Council consideration at an upcoming meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Davalos. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 4, consideration of lease extension for the Antenna Country Ridge Drive Water Tower. That would also be Deputy Public Works Director Kugler.
Thank you again. SprintCom earlier this year requested a lease extension to staff for their equipment that's on the Country Bridge Water Tower. The lease extension is for 5 5-year terms and with a 3% increase in rent each year. This agreement or extension is consistent with other recent extensions that the council has approved. Alderman Ashar, I think with the last extension, had asked if we, how we knew we were getting a fair price on, or fair rents from these. Glen Ellen did a survey recently of other communities in the area to see what their various mobile or wireless carrier leases were. And while we're not at the top, the very high end, we are certainly more than most. I'd say we're probably more than like 3/4 of the respondents to that survey as far as our lease rate. So I feel we're charging a fair rate still at this point. One of the things that we don't have on staff is to know, the survey didn't cover all the details. It covered, okay, here's how long it is, here's what the rate they're paying per year and that kind of stuff. So based on that information, we are still more than most and not quite as much as a couple of them. So I feel it's a fair extension, and I would be happy to answer any questions on it right now.
Questions, comments? Alderman Goodman?
My question had to do with the termination of Amendment 1 going back to 2017. Do you know what that's about?
I believe that it's been a while since I worked through this with the attorney. It was probably been a month since I dropped this in the folder for this. As I recall, I think they removed some equipment. There was an Amendment 1 where they added equipment and increased their lease amount by like $500 a month or something like that. But then they asked to remove that equipment and terminate Amendment number 1, so that this amendment is recognizing that that one was terminated because they did remove the equipment that was associated with that.
Okay, and they haven't been paying the extra rent since 2017 then, but we just didn't have it documented?
This was something Sprint and our attorney requested or wanted to make sure it was in here, just to be clear that Amendment number 1 is no longer applicable. So
Okay.
they haven't been paying the rent since then, since they removed the equipment.
Okay, that's, quite a long time ago. I just wondered what was going on. Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have, anybody, a motion? Alderman Goodman.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve an ordinance approving Amendment Number 2 to Communication Site Lease Agreement with Sprintcom Incorporated, doing business as Nextel Communications.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Bevere. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion passes. Number 5, consideration of a request to dispose of surplus city property. Public Works Director, Deputy Public Works Director Kugler.
Thank you. So when City Council approved the purchase of the new sewer camera back in June, the trade-in of the old cameras was not included in their proposal. Typically, recently we've been doing those purchases, we usually include the trade-in, and it was left out of the vendor's proposal. So to correct that, staff is recommending that we sell the old camera to JetVac Environmental, who is the one who sold us the new camera, for $2,500. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Alderman Goodman?
No comments. I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve an ordinance authorizing the disposal of city-owned surplus property.
Second.
A motion by Alderman Goodman and a second by Alderman Davalos. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. The next item is a information only, and it's the review and file Public Works Department FY 2020 Work Program and Decision Package Status Report. Does anyone have any questions for Deputy Public Works Director Kugler regarding the status report? Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the Deal Road down there by Target, the Deal Road. Have you gotten any feedback? I mean, I think it's really great, and because I go down there a lot, but I don't know, it's pretty new, but has anybody commented to you, or you've heard rumors that people like it or don't like it, or it's improving things?
I haven't heard one way or the other from people, but I do go down there periodically, a few times a week, and I use that left turn to get into the Target area, especially if you can see that lane, the other left turn lane is backed up. So, and I've also appreciated the extension of the dual left turn lanes to go to Winfield Road, because sometimes that right lane is backed up and you just can't get to the left lane when there's only like 2 cars sitting in it. So from my personal experience, I like it better. I think it's an improvement, but I haven't heard from residents.
Okay, Alderman Goodman?
Just to chip in my 2 cents, I was turning right out of the Target, and somebody made a U-turn and almost hit me in the new lane. And that was only the second time I'd gone through. The first time I went through the new lane, I was like, woohoo, this is done, this is so great. And then the second time, I almost got smashed, so less thrilled. I don't know, is there a way to put up a no U-turn sign or something there? Because that was out of the blue.
I can talk with DuPage County Division of Transportation and see what their position is on that.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the status report? Okay, and also the next item is for informational purposes only. This is a review and file Public Works Service levels and staffing study status report. Any questions for Deputy Public Works Director Kupler. Okay, I guess we're good. We have nothing. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor, you have a question?
I just had a clarification question for Phil about the decision to put a four-way stop in that situation. As I understood what you said, the four-way stop was not warranted. Does that open the city to liability? My understanding is that we can basically put stop signs wherever we like, but we're taking on some exposure if we put stop signs in that are not warranted. Is that the case?
So I talked to the city attorney on Friday afternoon about that to ask, and she said that no, in this case, the city be protected by tort immunity.
Okay.
Now, if there was a situation where there have been like 4 or 5 accidents there as a result of it, and the council then chose to ignore it, that might be a different situation. But I think in general, there's not tons of traffic. I mean, there is more traffic on the one road than the other. I don't think the risk is incredibly high that you're going to have somebody, have a severe accident there as a result. Even with people speeding, it's still relatively low speeds. You're not driving down Butterfield Road or 59 at 45, 50 miles an hour. But the accidents probably lower speed accidents.
But technically, we're exposing ourselves to a potential lawsuit. If there was an accident there, that a person could claim that that unwarranted sign was responsible for that accident. We could get sued for that technically.
People could bring a lawsuit just because we might win the lawsuit and being covered by tort immunity. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't sue us or try to sue
Okay, so
the city for it.
it's not
Yeah.
a concern of yours.
No, and I do think that just the four-way stop is preferable to leaving the situation that is there now.
Okay.
I think the four-way stop is a safer situation than what's there now.
Okay, appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have nothing under miscellaneous, and all I need is a motion to adjourn.
I
Alderman
move
Goodman?
to adjourn.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are adjourned, and thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you for listening.